Do you have a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old that you're planning on homeschooling this coming year? Okay, bear with me. You're going to think I'm crazy, but I want to encourage you not to homeschool your preschooler or kindergartner. Let me tell you why. For the vast majority of parents who are new to homeschooling, the first thing they think about when they start thinking about homeschooling is curriculum and programs. And whenever I see someone come into one of our local homeschooling groups or one of the big international groups that I'm on, and they say, I have a preschooler, I have a kindergartner, and we've decided to homeschool, what program should I start with? The first thing I always tell them is that curriculum is not for kindergartners. It's also not for preschoolers. You don't need it. Children that young are born to learn through play, through discovery, through exploration, through their imaginations. And when we force them to sit down and do workbooks or do circle time or do these formal approaches to education, what it does is it creates the separation in their mind between what it means to just learn and what it means to do school. And when we start creating this dichotomy between life and education, we create this mindset in our children that school is something formal and learning is something that is required and that has to be done a certain way. And what you end up finding is that even if your child has never been to school, you start indoctrinating them with this idea of what education is supposed to look like. And before you know it, you have to de-school even your young children just to get them in a mindset where they are able to approach education in a more holistic and natural way. So what should you do with your preschooler or your kindergartner when you feel like you want to start teaching them things? Step number one, you do what you've always done, which is that you just parent them. From day one, from the minute that child was placed in your arms, whether it was right after they were born or right after you adopted them or whatever the situation was, you started teaching. You have been homeschooling since that very first minute. What do we do when our babies are brand new? We talk to them and we exaggerate our facials, right? Lots of eyebrows and big smiles. And our voice does this thing where we go up and down. And we naturally realize that we are now teaching this little infant, this little minutes old baby. We naturally start doing things in a way that are meant to teach them our language, right? The first thing you did was teach your child your native language. And you didn't say, okay, today we are going to start learning English. No, you just start talking, right? Same thing with learning to feed themselves. You don't go, okay, so this is a spoon and you hold it this way and you scoop. Let's see if you can do it. You give your kids a spoon when they're, a few months old. You let them start chewing on it and playing with it and getting used to it. And then they start mimicking you and trying to use it the way that you use it. Same thing with getting dressed. Same thing with walking, right? Walking and crawling and all the things. You didn't have to do anything formal to teach your children how to do those things. You modeled them. You talked through them maybe in some way, but not in like a formal, today we're going to learn how to do this way, right? Parenting is homeschooling. Homeschooling is just an extension of parenting, okay? You don't have to do anything formal to teach your children. And that is actually true even as they get older, okay? But for this particular age, for preschoolers and kindergartners, just keep doing what you've been doing. You have been parenting them, and that is really all you need to do at this stage as well. You parent them through life. That's kind of step two, right? You're going to teach your child through life, and you've been doing that all along. You have been labeling things in your house, not putting labels on them necessarily, although some parents do that, but you've been labeling. This is the blue water bottle. This is the black apron. This is the yellow pencil, right? You've been labeling things. You have been describing those things. Your children have learned colors and shapes and names just from you kind of narrating your life, right? When you walk to the park, look at the cute rabbit. Look at the fuzzy squirrel. right? You're doing things all the time to teach your child. You are teaching them through life. You're not saying today we are going to learn our colors and then come out with all of these special colored papers and hold them up and say, this is red. No, you don't do stuff like that. Your child knows red because you've been labeling red things for months and months and months, right? That's teaching through life. You're just using the world around you and teaching your children. Again, you've been doing this. And so for kindergarten and preschool, you just keep doing it. There is no reason why you have to change what you're doing, because developmentally, that is appropriate. That is developmentally appropriate education for children that age. You're thinking of what they're doing in public school and you're thinking, oh my gosh, if my child were in school, they would be learning how to write their name and writing their numbers and counting to 100, and they would be doing basic math. Yeah, guess what? All of that, not developmentally appropriate. The vast majority of what children are learning at the kindergarten level in public school and in the preschool level, not developmentally appropriate. None of it. It is so frustrating for me to see, because not only are we setting those children up to think that they're not good at learning, or that they're not smart, or they're not good students just because they can't get this stuff, because they're not developmentally ready to get it. Not only does that frustrate me, but it frustrates me because parents like yourself know that that's going on and start thinking that's what you have to do too. It's not. Pay literally no attention to what they are doing in public kindergarten or public preschool. None of it is developmentally appropriate, okay? The third thing that you can start doing, if you haven't already been doing this, which chances are, again, that you have been, reading aloud. And if you can get your child, and when I say get them to do it, I mean like without a bunch of coercion and, punishment, because that's not fun. If they're able to come sit next to you and look at the pictures and you can talk about what's in the book, that's great, but they don't have to. Many of them, particularly the boys, are still going to be too wiggly and too energetic and too kinesthetically focused to sit and look at a book. Some kids can. Mine never could at the preschool level. And even at the kindergarten level, it was still a little bit of a struggle at that age. It is okay for your child to be coloring or playing with Play-Doh. You can sit and read a book while your child plays with their play kitchen, okay? They don't have to be staring at the page with you and sitting right next to you and tracking with every word. There will be a time when they can do that. And there is a time when it is developmentally appropriate to have them come do that and start practicing being still. But you need to wait until they have actually developed the skills that they need to be able to do that. And for most kids, preschool and kindergarten age, they haven't hit that yet. But what reading aloud does do for them, even if they're not sitting right there, first of all, you are putting wonderful language into their heads. You are modeling for them what good writing sounds like. Pick good books, okay? It doesn't have to be the one-word books. Those are great. Those are like the little encyclopedia type books where, it shows a scene and everything's labeled and here, those are great. It's, but particularly if the child is sitting right next to you, but that's not the kind of thing you read if they're not sitting right next to you. Find storybooks, find books that have good stories and read those to your child, because what that is doing is modeling for them good writing. It is modeling for them good storytelling. And you're also creating a shared language with your family. And you're creating these warm, fuzzy, happy memories, all centered around language and reading. If you want your child to be a reader in the future, if you want them to love books, then starting with books as early as possible and building those warm, fuzzy feelings with lots of read aloud, that is the way to do it. So if you have not been doing very much read aloud, start doing read aloud. If you've been doing read aloud, keep it up. Maybe, bump up a little bit what kind of book you are reading. There are some great lists online. I would look particularly for Charlotte Mason lists. Charlotte Mason is an approach to education that is literature based. And Miss Charlotte Mason herself was very big on what we call living books, very high quality books. And so if you find some Charlotte Mason reading lists, look for books that are appropriate for 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds. Use those books. Those are going to be the best kind of books to read to your children at this age. And then the fourth step to what you should be doing with your children at this age, instead of traditionally homeschooling them, is to leave them alone. Let them have independent, unstructured, as unsupervised as possible imaginary playtime. Time where they can just get lost in their own little world, where they can be talking out loud and imagining and repurposing things into things that their imagination comes up with. There are going to be times, obviously, that they want you to play with them. That's fine. There are going to be times they want to play with a sibling. That's great. But the point is, when we step in and we constantly tell them how to play or how to use certain toys, or why don't you do this, or why don't you try it that way? Okay, there's a time and a place for that, but we want to sprinkle it in lightly. We don't want to dictate to our children how they should play. That takes away the opportunity for their imagination to really develop. And believe it or not, imaginary play is a very important part of learning at that stage. So by continuing to parent your child, by teaching them through life, by reading out loud to them as much as they and your voice can possibly stand, and by simply leaving them alone to play, as much outside as possible. I'll add that too, outside as often as possible. Those are the things that these little 3 and 4 and 5 and 6-year-old bodies are wired to learn through. So if you focus on those things and on giving them the space they need to learn as they have been built to learn, then you will be laying a foundation for them to be able to learn through formal academics much later when it is developmentally appropriate for them to do so. So I hope that that helps you to plan your first year of homeschooling. Those of you who have children at this age, I've got an article that I have posted down below that talks a little bit more about developmentally appropriate learning at this age. That can also help you if you're looking for some resources. All right, thanks so much, guys. Talk to you again later. Bye.